Welcome to episode 30 of Gimme Empathy. It's a podcast. I'm the host, Scott Mercer. You're the audience. Hi. If you feel like you didn't get enough of recording engineer and musician Cam Smith in the last episode, you're in luck because this episode also features Cam. So to recap, in episode 29, I featured an interview I did with Cam Smith 5 years ago. It was originally going to be for another podcast that never really got off the ground. So I put that out. It was a long one, went through Cam's life story. And so all throughout the month of February, I'd be in the studio with Cam working on a recording project. And the day after we finished our last session, I went back to his basement studio at Incremental Records, and we sat down in the same squeaky chairs we did 5 years ago, and I recorded a follow-up interview with Cam because a lot's changed in his life in 5 years, and I was interested to hear about his perspectives on some of those changes. If you haven't listened to episode 29, that might help with this one. It's really a companion piece to 29, less of a standalone episode. We do refer to some of the things we talked about 5 years ago, so I'd recommend that. All right, the last episode was super long, so I won't take up any more of your time. Here's episode 30, again with Cam Smith. So Cam, this is a bit of a unique one because the listeners will have heard in the last episode a conversation we had 5 years ago in this very room here at Incremental Records.
It's a bit different now.
It's a little different. The layout's a bit different.
It would have been pretty empty back then because I would have just moved in here.
Yeah, I guess
It would have been within the first year. So.
Yeah, it was in May 2013.
Yeah,
we recorded.
It's getting cluttered.
But so what the focus of the podcast that didn't get off the ground was a bit different to this one. And one question I didn't ask in the first one was, how do you know me, Cam?
How do I know you? I can't even specifically remember because I guess you're just one of these, not just, but you're one of these people I've met through years of being involved in bands and Triple Z. And I guess I do remember meeting you. It would have been at Borders, and I played a little show doing then Mount Augusta stuff, and you called out for a request, and I was shocked.
Well, you asked for requests.
Yeah.
I think half sarcastically, not thinking anyone would know who
I didn't think
were.
anyone had any idea who we were at that thing, and other than, I don't even know if any of my friends were there, so I was just assuming no one knew. And then someone that I didn't know asked for a request. There we go. So there, I do remember. Yeah. I feel much better now. I would have felt really bad if after the thing, I would have gone, we met that way. And that's really memorable. I should remember that. So there we go. And
yeah, since then, so we've known each other it's funny saying work, even though it's in a semi-professional musical capacity.
Yes,
I played at venues that you've run. I've recorded here at Incremental heaps of times. But I had some follow-up questions from the previous interview because 5 years has passed, and I'm interested to see how some of your perspectives might have changed. Now, you haven't listened to the previous interview.
No.
I did offer yesterday to send you a copy, but I think you said you'd rather go in fresh.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure I wanted to know what I said. I have a feeling if and when I listen back, I probably will listen back to it and I'll probably cringe a lot. So I apologize for anything that I said in that other interview that is a bit wanky.
Right. Well, I'll start you off on an easy one. In the previous interview, Spirit Bunny had just started, and you were kind of not feeling great about it at the start. You just played your first show, and it was a bit of a disaster, you said, and you kind of weren't sure where it was going. How are you feeling about Spirit Bunny these days, Cam?
These days, I love Spirit Bunny. Yes, but there was definitely the first 2 or 3 shows were very painful for me. I wasn't dealing very well with a band that was just struggling to play as a band, very much struggling to play just to play the songs, like remember how, because those guys were like improv musicians. They hadn't done structured band stuff for a few years at that time. And I think they were just like taking a while to get their head around again, like, yes, we play this song in order, these parts, and they're supposed to be roughly the same part from show to show.
Yeah.
And the same structure from show to show. And it just took them sort of like 4 or 5 shows to sort of get back on that wavelength. But now I really love that band. It's one of my favorite bands I've ever been in. And I'm really happy. Like so we put out an album last year, and we're working on a new one, and it's really fun. It's really like challenging but rewarding, and I think we make really interesting, really unique music, which is fairly rare to be able to say that, like, for both of those things.
It's such an unusual setup. I imagine it would have been like just technically and sonically difficult to get for all of you to get your head around it, being drums, Commodore 64, and keyboard through a bunch of pedals.
Yeah. I guess that's not really been the tricky part with that band. It's just it kind of is what it is. Like that's what we had. We had these different instruments that we hadn't necessarily used very much in a band context, any of us, and that was kind of the idea. Like, let's use these things that we haven't really used in bands, or have just been kind of like peripheral to the band, like more just like a little garnish on the side, and let's make that the thing. I wanted to try some like drum loops and sort of electronic drums, but I didn't want to have like a sampler or a drum machine on the stage. Like, I wanted to be doing it live, so I sort of got this little setup, and Joel had all of his weird keyboards that he'd been tinkering with, and he wanted to use those, and they make some awesome sounds. And then Kate had kind of used the Commodore 64 a little bit in some bands, but like just like for her, that's the thing, that's what she plays, is those Commodores, and they provide, all of the instruments provide a bit of a problem. They've all had a gig where they haven't worked properly, and we've had to just kind of soldier through it. So yeah.
When we last spoke, you were still running your own venue, The Waiting Room. That kind of lasted a lot longer after that, in May 2013.
So I can't remember timelines on that. So what was that, about a year in, or 2 years? A year?
I'm not sure.
Just I can't. Yeah, but it went for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did it, but I don't miss it in the slightest. if that's what the first question was going to be.
Why did you give up The Waiting Room?
Money and time. So it was difficult to, like, I mean, it lost a lot of money, which is fine. Like, it was all, like, I always knew that was likely, and I was happy for that to happen, or like I was okay with that happening. It could, like, to make it into, it could have been made into a profitable space, but it would have required me to probably not really do the studio and stuff. So, and also to give up other things that I wasn't really happy, like, willing to give up. So I just kind of decided to take the hit financially in order to still be able to do the studio as much as I wanted to, and do other things. And yeah, it did take up a fair bit of time, and it was sort of becoming obvious towards the end that it was going to start coming up against some pretty strong problems with just volume. So we started out, I think, doing up to 4 nights a week, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then by the end, we were just doing Fridays and Saturdays, and I was trying to make at least one of those shows like a fairly quiet, like no drums kind of show. So, and of course, because since I'd gone from 4 nights to 2 nights, that was less opportunity for money to come in. And so we got Betty's Espresso moved in to sort of help with the rent, and so she got like a space for pretty cheap that she was able to start her business up in, and I had a little bit of extra help with income, and like, it wasn't completely optimal from her perspective because she had to like pack up her cafe every weekend, like once or twice a weekend, so it was a bit of a pain for her. But she ended up taking over that space and now runs Betty's, and they do shows there. Yeah, they start doing shows. Yeah, and so she's probably made more of a run of it than I ever did. So yeah, I guess it's more of her focus than it was for me. So for me, it was sort of 50% of what I was looking at, whereas for her, it's pretty much 100. Yeah, like in terms of her professional life.
How do you feel about going to Betty's Espresso now? Like, are there pangs?
No, I enjoy it. It's nice. It's sort of like, it's far enough removed now that I don't feel bad about it, like about the space. I don't feel protective of it, or like it's like, oh, she's changed it. Like, it's fine that it's changed. It changed towards the end of the venue ran for 3 years, but then I still had another year of having the lease. So the last year I was just the leaseholder, but I wasn't doing anything in the building. I sort of rented that space out to Betty's and some other spaces out to some other people, with which there were some issues.
What issues?
We had some flooding down there, like not flooding, but like it just was an old building, and it was on a hillside, so it had been cut into the hill, and over time, like the fig trees had like sort of cracked the foundations a bit, and so when it rained a lot, which it does in Brisbane through sort of a few months of the year, the water would kind of leak into the rooms. So we got that sorted in the rehearsal room, and sort of put in like a drain and a sump pump and everything, and that was fine. But then there was another room with like a drum teacher, and they built like a room within a room to soundproof it, and you couldn't get to the wall that leaked anymore. And it was this really bad situation where the guy was like, it's like, oh, well, so I'm getting water in my room, and so I don't want to pay rent, but I also don't want to do anything to help you fix the problem.
So
like,
he just wanted a free water.
Yeah, it's like,
room.
well, it's like, okay, well, so and also like we had it in the thing. It's like, oh, because you've built this room. Well, he didn't actually. He'd bought it off a guy for some astronomical fee. I later found out. But there was sort of like, it was in the things like, because you've got this room within a room, it kind of limits us on what we can do maintenance wise. So essentially, it's your responsibility, and we will do what we can. But if there's something that needs to be fixed and it's behind your wall, you have to remove and then replace the wall, or just deal with it. And so that was essentially like, we kind of had our hands tied because he wouldn't do anything. He wasn't willing to let us change anything, and the landlord was only willing to do so much. And so it was sort of like 3 people, like myself, the landlord, and him, who were not willing to budge, and it got pretty nasty. So yeah, it was definitely awkward.
So your main occupation is still recording engineer here at Incremental. What have you learned about recording in the last 5 years?
I have learnt that there are some things that I'm good at and some things that I'm not, and maybe I should just not try to do the things I'm not good at. And I'm more happy to turn things down, or to like halfway through a project to say, perhaps you should take this project to someone else now, because I don't think I'm going to be able to do what you want me to do. I had a bit of a bad patch, like about coming up to 2 years ago now. I kind of just lost my way with recording. I stopped enjoying it for a while, and did some recordings that just didn't work. And I think I was trying to please people too much, trying to give them what they wanted, but in ways that, I don't know, that I wasn't really hearing what I wanted to hear. Like, and not in a way, like I try to do is like what the band wants as much as possible, because it's their music, it's not mine. And so I try to, present it in the way that they want. But at the same time, I have certain strengths, and if you're coming to me to record, then surely you want those. That's why you're coming, because I do certain things well. I like to think that. Maybe it's not. And yeah, so I just had a few records where I just was trying to do things, and was kind of getting stressed out, and was trying to push myself and challenge myself, which is good, which you should do, but probably to do things that I shouldn't have been doing. So
like the lesson from that was not, oh, now I know how to do this. It's that, oh, I can't do this.
Well, some of it, I mean, there were definitely a bunch of things that like I pushed myself to do, and now I'm like, now I can do that. But I think it was just more the approach. My approach changed. Like I sort of went away from like, yeah, I wasn't listening. I think I got fixated on details and stopped listening to the overall thing, and it resulted in a couple of records that were a bit weird sounding, or that took a little while, took longer to get to where they should have been than it should have taken, or maybe had to be kind of in essence kind of like fixed in mastering a little bit, which is that's like the worst. Well, it's not the worst thing that can happen as a recording mix engineer. Like the worst thing is that it doesn't, like, it gets scrapped. That's the worst thing, which happened. There was a record that got scrapped, like a fairly big record that just didn't, and that was probably 50% me and 50% the band not really knowing what they wanted. They weren't really prepared with, like, the songs weren't quite written and the performances weren't quite dialed in, and they were wanting to try some new processes which didn't quite work, and the whole thing was just like, it was just a bunch of people who weren't quite sure what they were doing and ended up with a record that just sounded like it. It's like, it was just sort of like everyone just kind of dropped the ball to some extent,
Right.
and then they went off, and it was around the time that I had my daughter, so I was kind of out of action anyway, and I was kind of stressed because I had that coming up and I was trying to rush like a bunch of records at the same time, like a couple of big projects, and I'm like, I've got a daughter due. Oh, I didn't know, a baby. I didn't know what the sex was at the time, but like, it's due, any time now. Like, it could come any day, and I've still got these big records that I need to finish. And like, once the baby's due, I'm out of action for 2 or 3 months. Like, I'm not doing any studio work unless I have to. So it was a bit stressful. And then, so there were 2 big ones in particular, and one of them came out and the band was super happy, and I was kind of like, I don't know if it's if I've done a good job or if I've screwed it up. And it turned out I did a good job, but at the time I thought I'd screwed it up, and the other one didn't come out.
What do you think you're not good at in the recording sphere?
I'm not good at making bands' decisions for them. I don't like doing it. I don't really want to do it. Some bands want you to, and I would rather they made the decision, because I'm a difficult person to be in a band with, because I have fairly strong opinions and I fight for them, and I can be kind of blunt about my opinions in a band context. But in a recording context, I'm kind of the opposite. I try to pipe down until either there's maybe a conflict in the band, if there's like a couple of different options and they can't come to a decision, and I'll try to help out and sort of like maybe look at the options from different angles to maybe hopefully like then people are a little bit less protective of their idea if they can sort of see that there's someone who's trying to be a little bit objective and trying not to keep to take sides, and hopefully that can help them to maybe come to sort of some sort of agreement. But yeah, like when bands are just like, what should we do? Is that a good vocal performance? Like, I've only heard you sing 3 times now. Like the 3 takes we've done, that's all. Like, I don't know if you're better, if you like, I don't want to like just sort of have like, this is the minimum performance level that everyone needs to hit to have, for it to be a recording that is releasable, because every band's different. And until I've worked with a band a bit, it's difficult to know. So sometimes, and that can kind of work either way. Like sometimes you can sort of be pushing a band because you think, that you think that they can do better, and maybe they can't. Maybe that's, or at least not at that point in time. And maybe it would be better just to kind of put it down and everyone to sort of feel good about it than to sort of grind it into the dust and kind of have people feeling frustrated and pissed off. But then on the other, sometimes you sort of think like, I think that's probably about as good as we're going to get. And then maybe like you record them next time and they do like these much better performances, and you think, oh, maybe I should have pushed them a little bit more last time. But I think ultimately you've got to sort of trust the band to be a good judge of what's good for them.
So if it is a band that you've seen a bit before, or even recorded before, do you feel like more confident in having an opinion, like saying you can do that better? Come on.
Definitely, yeah. Like there are definitely bands where like I've seen them a bunch live, I've worked with them before, and yeah, you definitely get a feel for like, this is that band's aesthetic, and this is that band's sort of performance style, and this is the feeling that I get when I see them play live. And so I try to, you try to capture that. So, I mean, moderately recently, within the last few years, I got to work with Turnpike. Well, I guess I would have been working with them when we had that interview, because that record took like 7 years to make or
Yeah.
something ridiculous. I think it was like 2008 or 2009 to like 2015, 16. It was like so long. But that was a band that I had seen so many times, and I'd listened to those records that they made with their previous engineer just over and over, and I knew that band like back to front as a listener. So when they came to me, I was like, this is what I think should be, like, this is the presentation that I think is very flattering to you guys, and it was sort of a mix of like what their previous records had been, but also what their live show was, and so I guess sort of filtered through my ears and aesthetic, and I was really happy with that record, and I got the feeling, well, they've said to me that they're really happy with it too, so
It's a good record.
I think so. I think it's a great record.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I guess that's a process thing. Are there any more technical parts of recording you found that aren't your strongest?
I'm not great at I'm not a slick recording guy. Never have been. And I think for a while there I was trying to get more slick. And then I kind of realized, I was like, back when I started recording, I was always just about like, let's try to get this song to have like the maximum energy that it can. And I used to be like meticulous, like just like spending ages like doing like tiny little volume changes to like just make certain notes on guitars and drums like just hit at a certain time. And over the years I didn't do that, and partially because I got better at just capturing the sound, so I didn't have to. But yeah, I think I started trying to get things a bit too slick, and I'm just like, if you want to do that, there's other engineers who do that better. I think that was part of what I realized about a year or so, because I was sort of got to the point where I was like, I either need to sort of kind of move, like take a step back and get back to what I used to do better in terms of like enjoyment wise and technically, or I need to get out, because I had like this period where I was like barely working, like I had just empty like a couple of days a month in the studio, and I was like, well, this can't continue. So I sort of like just kind of rebooted and just put the word out that I was like looking to do some stuff, and ended up getting a few big bookings, and now I'm crazy busy again. So yeah, like being slick, I'm not very good at it. Like I don't make the sort of recordings that would fit in seamlessly on commercial radio. I'm just not very good at it. I don't do it very well. Like I can make a good recording, but just not that sort of good recording.
Sure.
It's like a different sort of good recording.
What do you think you are good at?
Hopefully, like getting the sound of the band play. Like if you listen to the recordings, like that's what they sound like when I see them at a show. Hopefully in an optimized version of that. I'm not great at making like a Fantasyland version of the band, but I am pretty good at just like, here's what that drummer sounds like without fixing up all this shit and miking up the drums in a way that it could be any drum kit. Like that's the snare sound that you hear on thousands of records. Like, well, how about that? It sounds like the snare that he played that day in that room. Yeah, let's hear the guitarist play his or her amplifier that they play all their shows on, instead of playing through that, like Dale from Dollar Bar, like he's got that little Fender thing that sounds ratty as hell, and it's got so much noise and buzz, and he's got like this guitar that feeds back. It's got like microphonic feedback, and it's such a weird sounding guitar, and let's just use that because that's what Dale sounds like, and like Adam from Turnpike, he's got that PV, that big PV amp, which is kind of muddy sounding, and it's kind of clunky, but it sounds like that is the sound of Adam, And then we, like, with both of those, we sort of tweaked it a little bit. So like with Adam, we ran that big PV that's his sound, but then we also split it and we ran like a little Vox AC15 at the same time. And so we had this sort of blend of the two, just to sort of, because we sort of decided that like all the other Turnpike records have extra guitar parts. Like there's only been one guitarist for a while. They used to have two. But for the last few records, there's only been one guitarist, but they still had two guitar parts. And we sort of decided, let's just make it sound big enough that we don't need a second guitarist. Like you don't have to come in and come up with a second guitar for the whole record. Let's not worry about that. And they kind of got on board after a bit. At first, Adam was like, I don't know, man. I think, and then he sort of went like, and listened to it. It's like, no, it's good. Let's yep, that's good. We'll just leave it as one guitar. So yeah, so I guess it's sort of a blend of like, how do we make this exciting and capturing like the energy of seeing a band live when it's still just, it's going to be coming out of like two little speakers, like headphones, or a little, an iPhone on its speaker mode, or maybe best case scenario like a cranked car stereo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to think that I'm pretty good at that.
In the previous interview at the end, I asked if you were kind of happy and satisfied with what you'd achieved at the age of 29. And you said that, I think, basically musically you're happy where you're at, but there were some more like personal life things you wish you had more time for. Like you specifically said you wanted to get married and have a kid.
Yeah.
You've got married and you had a kid.
Yeah.
Like, where are you with that now?
I'm much better. Yeah. I think I'm more satisfied now, like, because yeah, the waiting room specifically sort of held that back because it was such a financial drain and a time drain. So I'd been with my partner Helen and we got together in like second year of university, so like 2002. We had a bit of a break. Like after we finished uni, she moved away for work, and we had a few years apart. I don't know if I talked about this in the last one. It was like, so she moved to Weipa and I stayed in Brisbane. And we tried the long distance thing, and it's hell. I was really depressed. It's the one time in my life, like that time and slightly following it, where I was actually drinking really heavily. I was like just going out and just getting like really, by my standards, quite drunk, like multiple times a week. I'm not really a big drinker, but that was the only time I've ever actually drunk quite a lot. And it was just because I was really lonely. It's not fun doing long distance relationship. And I started really resenting it, and I wanted to end it, but I didn't know how. And I kind of we had a couple of like holidays away, which were just not fun because, and you're spending all this time apart, you finally get time together, and then you're not enjoying it because in the back of your mind, you're just sort of like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. So it ended, but then Helen finished her work up there and she moved back to Brisbane, and we didn't get back together straight away because I think we didn't want to. I certainly didn't want to feel like it's like, oh well, I haven't found anyone else in the intervening 2 years, so now my ex-girlfriend's back from up north, and we'll just get back together and it'll be back. I was like, well, I want to make sure that it's actually like it's what we want to do, and it turned out it was what we wanted to do, and we're still together now. We're married and we've got a kid, so everything worked out well. But
how did you work that out at the time? Like, which one of you first floated the idea of getting back together once she moved to Brisbane?
I think Helen, she had less hang-ups about it than I did. So she was I think she was sort of thinking, I'm moving back. Neither of us are in other relationships. We should probably think about just picking up where we left off. And I was a lot more wary of just going back because it was comfortable. And like I wanted to make sure that we were definitely, that was what we wanted to do. And I went away with my family. My family was, my parents were living in like Northern Africa, and my sister she'd just finished uni and she was living in the UK at the time. And so the opportunity came up to like get some really cheap flights to go visit them in Europe. And I went over and was just sort of cheaply traveling with my sister because she had no money. She'd spent it all. So she was like, I was really pissed off because I had to like travel like super cheaply, and I actually could afford to, because I had a decent job. I could afford to get a nice hotel, and she was like, no, I have no money, we have to stay in the shitty hostel. But I remember going on that trip and like really missing Helen, and that was kind of when I realized, it's like, oh, I think it's the best thing to do. So I came back and we pretty much, yeah.
That happened with me actually. Like a year into my relationship with Sam, she went to Europe for a few weeks on holiday, and like I was, it sounds weird to say, but I was really surprised by how much I missed her. And when she came back, like I asked her to move in with me, and then we did a few months later.
I remember this particular day in Amsterdam where my sister and I kind of split up. We went and did separate things, and I just got really, really down. Just was really missing her that one particular day, and sort of got back to the place we were staying, and my sister got really up me for being so like, oh, why are you so down? We're in Amsterdam, it's beautiful. She like really got stuck in. She's since apologized for that day specifically. She's like, I'm so sorry. That was so mean of me. It was really. She really like didn't hold back at all. And I was like, look, I'm just having a bit of a down day. Like, it'd be nice if you could just give me some space or something and not just like harass me. But yeah, so that was, I remember that day specifically. Like, that was kind of the day where I was like, if I'm feeling this bad about it, it's probably pretty, like, it's a good thing because it shows obviously what I should be doing. So, and luckily I came back and Helen hadn't changed her mind. She hadn't decided, oh, I'll bugger that guy. I'll find something better, which she probably almost certainly could have done.
So since you have gotten married and had a kid, having a kid obviously it changes everyone's life. Like, what effect has that had on how you organize your time?
I don't get a lot of free time anymore of any sort. And that's also because, I mean, in order for us to both do what we do, so Helen works full time, and she's got a pretty busy job, and I still wanted to do the studio, and we didn't want to put Jen in daycare all week, so we sort of worked it out that she works regular Monday to Friday hours, and then I work over the weekend essentially. Friday so we put Jen in daycare on Friday and Monday, and I work over the weekend. And then I look after her during the week. But it does mean that basically we don't really get any time to ourselves because one of us is always either working or looking after Genevieve, and often on our own, unless if I don't have a booking in the studio, then I might get a weekend day like I've got today. Today I'm not working, so being a Sunday. So I can kind of help, although instead I'm doing
Sorry.
This. So, and then this afternoon I've got rehearsal, so I'm not being much help today.
So it sounds like in all that, the thing, like you've thought about your time and your commitments and all this, and the thing that seems to be losing out most is just your relationship with Helen.
Well, no, like they all lose out a bit. So, I mean, the studio, there's a bunch of days a week that I'm just not available anymore. So, there are bands who want to come in midweek because it's easier for them, and it's cheaper. I have a lower rate during the week, and they just can't. You're gonna have to come in a Monday, Friday, or a weekend and pay a little bit more. So so that loses out a little bit. The bands, they all now, like, I have a 1 gig a week rule. So if one band gets in first and another band gets offered a good show, it's like tough. I can only do 1 a week. It has to be something really amazing, and I have to get ticked off by Helen to be allowed to do 2 in a week. And like I can't spend as much time rehearsing, and because I've got less days in the studio, that means the days I do have tend to be booked up more, which means I've got less days for bands to, like my own bands, to use the studio and stuff. So everything's been compromised, in quotation marks, a little bit, but it's all for the greater good. It's all worthwhile.
Are you satisfied with those compromises?
Yeah, and it's, in some ways it's good because so a few years ago I sort of, along with kind of getting the shits with the studio, I just got a bit over all of the music stuff, and I was seriously considering just stopping. And in some ways, I kind of wish that I had, like, it always seems like a little bit of like, it seems like the coward's way out to continue. Like, at, about to turn 35 with a wife and a kid, a small business owner, like, I should be at the point where I can be like, no, don't have time for bands anymore, time to grow up, time to, focus on the things that are important, and I can't not do music. And I feel like it almost feels like a character flaw that I can't just say, that's not important anymore, I should just stop that. And I can't do it. It's like something, even when I want it, even when I hate it, even when I am not enjoying being in bands, which definitely happens. And I just want to be like, no more. And I can't do it because I've done it for so long, and it's such a big part that it's just like, I can't just cut that cord. and then things get good again and you enjoy it. It's still like, whether you're enjoying it or not, it's still a massive soak of time and money. Like I've got 5 weekends away of touring in this first half of the year because I've got 2 bands releasing records. So Tape Off and Terra Pines. I don't think I'd even started Terra Pines when we did this last interview.
No.
So
Tiny Spiders was, I think, still there.
Yeah, so that one kind of fell away. Like that's a lot of time.
And touring is not a money-making enterprise.
No, it's going to cost a fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you got all that. And so if I could, I would stop doing it. I certainly stopped being in 3 bands. But like, I like hanging out with those people. And I still enjoy the music enough that I enjoy writing songs. I enjoy playing a good show. I don't enjoy getting the gig. Like I'm a shit of a person to meet at the start of a gig. I'm always pissed off. I'm always like, I do not want to be here. Leave me alone. I've got your fucking gear here. What else do you need from me? Like, just, I just don't want to be there. I want to be back home. I'm missing Gardening Australia right now, you realise? But I'm still, overall, I still like doing it. But yeah, I don't know. I could still be doing this in 20 years' time, still being in multiple bands, or at least a band. Or I could totally decide this year, like, no, I'm done. Get these 2 albums out of the way and then be like, I don't feel like I need to go through all this again. Like, I might call it. I don't know.
Last September, which is 5 months ago, you posted about this kind of thing on Facebook, and it was sort of you were, soliciting advice from your friends in bands, and you said, you were feeling. You asked what to do when all your music commitments were, quote, making you want to crawl up into a small ball. What did you get any particularly helpful advice from like your friends and peers at that time?
Yeah, I did. I think the advice was sort of the sort of stuff that you kind of intuitively know. I had a chat with a few people sort of outside of that, and I probably won't mention who they were because it's probably not really appropriate, but because they might not have talked about this with their band members, and it might be a bit of like, what? But I had a chat with a few people, and some that I wasn't expecting to sort of have similar feelings, and it was nice to know that this is just. I mean, you kind of know that this is just something that pretty much everyone in bands kind of feels. I guess maybe I felt it a bit more acutely because I play in a bunch of bands and, being a new dad. And I think a lot of that was also brought on by Spirit Bunny was, like, we played Big Sound and I didn't want to apply. But I let the other band members apply because I assumed we had no chance of getting in. But then we got in and the other guys are teachers and they didn't have the time to go. So I had to go and be like the band representative, and it was coming up, and I was like not looking forward to it. I did not want to do it, and I had to. And I'm like, I got to talk to all these. I hate talking to industry people. I'm not good at it. Like, as someone who essentially works in the music industry, I'm not an industry person. I hate it. And I was like looking to. In the end, it was not nearly as bad as I'd made it out to be in my head. I actually had a decent time. Like, I didn't mind. Actually, some of the conversations were really awkward, and it was just obvious within a minute. It's like we shouldn't be here. We should be both having a beer separately, like hanging out with people we want to hang out with, not being stuck here like for 15 minutes talking to each other because it's written on a sheet. But there were some other ones, like we just ended up having a nice chat and met some people, talked to some people, and didn't worry too much about it in the end. And it wasn't nearly as horrendous as experience as I was thinking it might have been. And we played some shows, and they were fun, and people came to watch us and like yelled at the appropriate times, and got to go out and see a couple of bands like at the thing. And then so the first night I went out and actually like watched big sound bands, and the second night was like, I got some friends playing like an unofficial sideshow thing, so I might just go that, and I just ended up hanging out there with my mates the rest of the night. So didn't even like go into the venue and watch the bands. So, and that's something I'm much more comfortable with doing as I've gotten older. Is like not. I used to be like, I still try to as much as I can, but I used to feel really like feel an obligation to watch every band that on every bill that I played, and certainly watch like the vast majority of the set, if not the whole set. And now I don't feel quite so militant about that. I try to watch a bit at least. Try to get a couple of songs. But if I want to go outside and have a chat, or go get some food, or just get some fresh air and get out of the hot, sweltering room or overly air-conditioned room, then I'll just go and do that. So I feel, I'm a little bit less strict on myself with things like that now.
What are your future plans for recording? Because a while ago, I think you also posted something about maybe taking a bit of a break from Incremental from July or something in this year.
Yeah.
And that's actually what, we've just finished a month of recording some solo stuff with me doing a day and a half a week yesterday. Like, the project's not finished, but we've got a bunch of stuff done. We'll come back to it.
It's getting along.
Yeah. But like, one of the reasons I booked in this time was because you said that, and it was like, oh, Cam might not always be recording stuff. I really want to record. I always want to record this particular material with him. I'd better get in now.
Yeah.
Are you still planning on taking a break?
It's more that like I'm interested in maybe going and doing some study in something separate, maybe something that's kind of related. Like, I wouldn't mind maybe. I have a little slight interest in electronics and stuff, and I wouldn't mind like actually doing some study and learning about it. It's a hard thing to study though, electronics specifically. It either seems like you can either go to university and get an electrical engineering degree, which is not what that's way overkill for what I'm sort of doing, or you can go to TAFE and become a Sparky, and that's not really what I want to do either. I kind of want this middle ground. Like, I want to know about the electronics and some of the theory behind electronic circuits and stuff, but not to the extent that they teach you when you go to like a couple of years of get a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering.
Would you do like an online course, or even just find? I'm sure that must be a kind of thing where there'd be millions of YouTube videos.
Yeah, I don't trust my self-motivation enough to do it, but it's probably especially with a kid and like, if I did that, I'd probably just keep doing this so I don't know. It's something I've considered. I have thought about doing an online course. Or then, like, I've also thought of just doing something completely unrelated, like horticulture and I really love gardening. So I used to spend all my money on records and microphones, and now I spent it all on plants and microphones. I still buy microphones. I still love microphones.
Well, tell me about gardening. I'm not sure if you're quite as much a gardening enthusiast when we did the last interview.
No, I don't think so. I think I'd maybe just sort of started fixing up the yard. So I had a bit of an interest. I've always had a bit of an interest because like my parents were pretty keen gardeners when I was a kid. So I've always enjoyed it. Like, I've enjoyed gardens. I enjoy nature, and I enjoy sort of people trying to capture nature in their little plot.
Gardens are pretty.
Yeah, gardens are great. They're like genuinely great for your health and your stress levels. I love getting out and spending a day in the garden. I feel so much better, and I feel really productive. Like, it's one of those things. Same thing as just like cleaning the house, which you've just been upstairs. You see, that doesn't happen too often around here at the moment. But just like just the enjoyable aspects of everyday humdrum life, like just getting something sorted, like buying a set of shelves and organizing your shit. It's very real. It's very enjoyable. Like, endorphins being released when you've got it all sorted.
I don't think I understood the gardening thing until you just said that, because I'm an organizing person, and organizing really relaxes me, even if it's like, I mean, obviously I did a diploma in library services. Of course, my bookshelves are already organized. But like my music library on my computer, I've always got new stuff to add to it and tag it correctly and put my own little tags in for like Australian and local. So when I take it to 4ZZZ, it's already tagged and stuff. I get it.
And I think also because, I mean, gardening, and I find cooking is the same. And I do quite like to cook, although I don't do it as much. I mean, I cook most of the meals here. Like, do more of the cooking than Helen does, just probably because I enjoy it more. And also with Genevieve, Helen has a little bit more of the putting to Genevieve to bed. Genevieve being my daughter. I don't think I've mentioned that yet. So Helen usually puts Genevieve to bed more often than not. And so while she's doing that, I'll cook dinner. And I find like gardening and cooking, it's like a real, and music, they're all actually like really good sort of blends of like a bunch of different things that are like, they're all potentially very creative. they're all potentially like there's like a scientific aspect to it, and
There's an artistic aspect to
yeah,
it as
like
well.
it's this good blend of like knowing the mechanics of it, and then putting that knowledge and those mechanics together to create something that's unique, hopefully, and an expression of your personality optimally. And so that's why I kind of enjoy a lot of those things. And I also enjoy like very, very basic like enjoyment of like woodworking. Like I'd really like to like actually learn how to properly woodwork, like do like nice dovetail joints and all that kind of stuff. That would be really cool. And that's another thing I was sort of thinking, like, if I don't know if you could turn that into much of a job, but like it would be, I'd really love to go and just spend a few months doing like a really good woodworking course. But yeah, doing the garden's great. When I get the time, I can go out there and spend a good portion of the day, and in the cooler months, the whole day out in the garden, get hot and sweaty and dirty and covered in mosquito bites, but then you get this really beautiful garden. At this time of year, like it starts when it starts to cool down, and there's been plenty of rain. Like the garden looks, it's really rewarding. You can go out there and it's like these trees are doing awesome, and I've got that grasshopper problem under control, and the fruit trees over here are doing really well, and hopefully we'll get like a nice crop in spring. Yeah, and I've got this tree that is probably not really supposed to grow very, very well in Brisbane, but I've got it in just the right position with the right microclimate, and I've fed it just properly, and it's doing really well. And I'm really happy about that, and stuff like that.
Is gardening ever stressful at all? Like when things don't go right, like when something's dying and you don't know why, or there's insects you can't get rid of?
Yep, very much so. And then the possums come and eat your. So I grew up in Melbourne, so I really like seasonal trees and autumnal trees. Trees that colour up through the cooler months, and that's not something you get very much of in Brisbane. We don't really get much of an autumn and winter. So I've very specifically chosen certain trees that will do that in Brisbane. But then like the possums love the soft leaves that come through in spring, and so and the grasshoppers, and they can you just go you go away on tour for a weekend, you come back and they've just decimated all of the trees, and it's just tearing your hair out. How do I get rid of So I've figured out my grasshopper deterrent is pretty good. I haven't had much grasshopper problems this year. I figured out my plan of attack there. And
what do you do for grasshoppers? Because grasshoppers are my greatest fear.
Neem oil.
Neem
oil.
What is
when they first appear? So neem oil. It's it's a oil extract from a tree, from a neem tree, which I think is like an Indian tree from Southern Asia. I think, could be completely wrong. Could be from somewhere else completely. But it's this oil. So you just mix it in water and you spray it on all the plants that they like to eat. So in my garden, that's often like my salvias, my basil, my deciduous trees. So I'll just spray all of those. And what it does is the grasshoppers, anything else, they eat it. Basically, as soon as they eat it, or very shortly after, it just basically kills their drive to eat and reproduce. So they just stop eating.
How does it
They
do
stop.
that?
It's just, I don't know, something. It's just what it does. And I think it also stops the exoskeleton, like the new skin, from hardening up. So if they do try to shed, they basically just shed and turn to jelly.
Ew.
So that one's not so nice. But
My God. Does it work on people?
No, well that's the thing, because and it's very it's safe for your beneficial predatory insects. They can still eat the grasshoppers and whatnot that have eaten the thing, and it won't affect them.
Wow.
So they'll keep going. So it's a really safe way. It doesn't really harm humans. You should probably wash it off the leaves if you're going to eat it anyway. But it's essentially fairly safe. So it's a really good way, and it seems to work really well, especially when you're young. When you start seeing the little tiny grasshoppers, they're a centimeter long.
Yeah, little green
ones.
ones.
You just spray whatever it is that they eat, and you learn after a while which trees in particular they're going to eat, and you just spray those with this neem oil, and then they just disappear, and then maybe they come there'll be a new batch a month or two later, and you just spray it, and and a few you'll get them from neighbors' yards and stuff, get the big ones later on. But for the big ones, I usually just go out at nighttime and just because they go to sleep and you just pick them up and just rip their heads off.
Ugh. Big ones are the ones I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
Like the little green ones are cute and,
Yeah.
you poke them and they jump away.
Yeah.
But the big, 1.5 long ones,
Yeah.
they've
big locusts.
They've creeped me out since childhood because they're insects, but they move like reptiles. When they're like on a leaf and they're walking, they move so slowly.
Or like praying mantis. I mean, praying mantis are awesome because they're predatory.
Praying mantis are kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because they can't fly. Because the other thing is, at any moment, a grasshopper could, be creeping along and then it'll just fly at you and lodge itself on the back of your shirt, which definitely happened when I was a child.
Yeah, yeah.
And another time I saw 2 adult grasshoppers copulating and it was just really disturbing.
I don't think I've run across that one in the yard yet. Yeah. As a kid, I remember when I used to live in WA, we had this big grapefruit tree out the back, and it used to get covered in locusts. And we had this dog, this Dalmatian called Milo, and I'd go out there with a cricket stump, and I'd hit the grasshoppers, the locusts, they were huge, off the grapefruit tree onto the ground, and she would jump on them and eat them.
Wow.
And I'd go out there and we'd just knock off all the locusts from the grasshopper tree, and she'd get a full tummy and we'd save our tree. So Jasper, unfortunately, my greyhound now, he doesn't do that. He's not interested in anything, which is good because we've got lots of lizards and stuff around the yard and he just doesn't pay any attention to them.
He doesn't seem like he'd be the kind of chasing dog these days, yeah.
No, just other dogs as they like go for a walk up and down that fence line. He runs up and down and buggers up his feet when he tries to turn too quickly. But yeah, he's a good dog. He gets a bit now we've got the baby, he gets ignored a little bit. I feel really bad for him. He's a very patient, very loving dog.
He's lovely. And he's a rescue, isn't he?
Yeah, he's an ex-racer. Yeah. So we adopted him. And I think we were like, I don't think we knew anyone else. Like now there's like heaps of people with greyhounds. I think at the time I didn't know anyone with a greyhound, and my wife sort of suggested we all think you're getting a dog. And Helen was like, "Oh, we should get a greyhound." And I was like, "A greyhound? They're weird dogs, and like they need heaps of exercise. Like they're running dogs. We have to like exercise them all the time." And she's like, "No. Read this." And it's like they're really sleepy and they love to cuddle and they're actually really soft and fluffy and all this stuff, and they don't actually eat that much for a big dog, and they don't need heaps of exercise. Like they're actually really good apartment dogs, and they tend to be really good with children and all this stuff. I'm like, this is like the perfect dog. So we went down to the adoption place in Deception Bay or whatever on the north side and met a bunch of greyhounds, and Jasper just he picked us. He was obviously like, we couldn't not take him because like, so you go there and there's all the pens with all the dogs, and like decent sized pens, and they get let out, so it's quite comfortable living for a life for them there. And each one of them, they'd open the pen and the dog would just like zoom around and just run everywhere. And then after a couple of minutes, eventually it would come back and meet us and say hello and get a pat. And Jasper, they just opened his gate and he just walked straight over to me and he put his head on my hip and he just looked up at me and got a pat, and he just stayed there for like 10, 15 minutes getting a pat. And eventually we sort of like moved him over to Helen so that she could have a pat too. And he just wasn't interested in like going and having a run and stuff. He just wanted a pat. And I think we were basically like, oh, I think we're going to have to take him. So we were worried he was going to be like too mellow. And so we didn't get him that day. We sort of like, we went and then we came back about a week later and he was a bit more playful. And we were like, oh, good. He's not just like a sad sack. He's playful too. So yeah, we took him home that day. So, because there was one other dog that we quite liked too, who was like just this big sort of goober of a dog, like really clumsy and unco, but really lovable. But he went off to another family, so he had a good life too.
So where are you at with your solo stuff, your St. Augustus stuff? Because you're sitting on a few unreleased albums.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I got this record that I did, I think I basically finished it in 2014. I didn't put it out then because I got really precious about it. Like, because they were songs that sort of at the time meant a lot, and I'd been working on them for a while. And, you know, it was my first proper solo record. Like, so I done Mount Augustus, but that was a band when we did that record. Even though I wrote the songs, like it's still like other people playing on the record, and it was a band that played as a band. And then so I did this record, and I don't know, I sort of felt like oh, I don't want to just put it out because it'll disappear. So I'll play some shows, and I'll do some stuff, and I'll wait until it's the right time, and then I'll put it out. And I really wanted to put it out on vinyl, and I didn't have the money at the time, so I was spending it on all my other bands, and I was running the waiting room. Yeah, so I just kind of sat on it, and I got less precious about it, but then I also just didn't put it out. So, and in the meantime, I went and recorded and put out a whole other record, which I really like, actually. And I did that was part of Harley Young's 7 Songs in 7 Days project. So I sort of signed up for that a couple of years ago, what was it, November or something, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I think he did it 2 years in a row. So for the listeners, and I think it's not an idea Harley came up with, but he kind of organized a bunch of musicians he knew through Facebook as like a songwriting challenge, to write and record a demo of a song every day for 7 days. And then we all upload them to Dropbox, and we listen to each other's and comment on them and all this stuff. And I did it 2 years in a row. I think you did
the second, I think
in the
it was,
second year, yeah. And it was really funny because most of us were just recording our phones and stuff.
Yeah.
And you, who had this entire studio in your home, had these professional sounding recordings every day. It's but he's cheating.
Yeah, but at the same time, I wasn't spending huge amounts of time on it.
Yeah.
I had, because I had as a lot of musicians do, an iPhone full of just here's 4 chords that I've come up with that sound okay together. So I just sort of went through the phone. But I sort of decided when Harley put it together, and I was like, oh, okay, that's going to be in a period where I'm going to have time. I can go into the studio each night and spend a few hours, so I'll do it. But I sort of thought, this would be a good opportunity to give me a kick up the bum to do something. So I sort of took each night as I'm not going to write a joke song or a little tossed off, not tossed off, but a sort of a song where I write a verse and a chorus, and then, oh, well, that'll do.
That's exactly what I did for all of mine.
Yeah.
Joke songs and tossed off stuff.
Yeah. So whereas I was no, I'm gonna put the same effort that into these songs that I would into a song that I'm gonna put out. So if it all goes well, I have 7 songs, and so I did. So I'd come down here, and I'd finish upstairs, have dinner, and about 8 o'clock or something, I'd come down here and I'd stay until sort of midnight or so, and I'd start with just here's a little instrumental half-assed demo from my phone, and I'd figure out what to make it into a song, and then write some lyrics and come up with some other little instrumentation and stuff. Pretty basic. And I sort of had rules for myself. I always like to have rules with St. Augustus.
With all your bands, I think.
I like rules. Rules are great.
You mentioned that last time.
Yeah, you should have rules. Every band should have rules.
What are some of your rules that you just have for yourself in your solo project?
So I think, on the album that I'm going to put, the Long Lost album, I'm going to put it out this year. It's definitely going to happen. I'm not going to go back and listen to it and go, because I always think, I'm going to put it out. And then I go back and listen to it, I need to remix these songs because I haven't listened to them for 2 or 3 years.
So you're not even going to listen to it? Just
I'll listen to it. I think it needs the master. I might just look at the master, but I'm not going to remix anything. Yeah. So for that record, the rule was no bass and only 3 instruments plus vocals. So everything. So it's there's maybe guitar, drums, and saw, or whatever. There's only ever 3. That was the rule. Yeah, no bass. And I think on the new one, so it ended up becoming, or it was called 7 Days, the one that came out of Harley's thing. There was no bass on that, and I can't remember that. I think that maybe and I think the other rule was just sort of the self-imposed, was just the nature of that
one
thing.
Song
it was one
day.
song a day. Yeah. So I did the 7 songs. I had one other song which was supposed to go on the unreleased album, but it was always kind of a bit of an outlier. It was quite sort of poppy and upbeat, even though it's kind of a downer of a song lyrically. It was a bit more upbeat, and it just didn't sort of fit on that other record, but it actually fit really perfectly with this other batch of songs. So that made 8, and then I just continued. I wrote 2 more in the week following that week-long challenge, and so that gave me 10 songs, and that was an album. So I think that was basically just the way that record came along. That was kind of the rule. But then I've got I've been working on a record, and I did a bunch of it sort of probably about 2 years ago. I did like 2 songs, and they were long songs, and they're like really layered, and they have bass on them. And yeah, I guess it's that, and that has rules, but I suppose it's more just like aesthetically. And then I did another song for that, like late last year. So I'm up to 3 songs, and they're all like between like 6 and 9 minutes long. So it's I probably only need 2 more songs, and I've got a record. So yeah, definitely I'm a fan of rules. Like we instigated rules for the new Tape Off record.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Tape Off records were generally really layered and sort of quite sort of studio records. And for the new one, we were like, nope, just 2 guitars, drums, bass, vocals. Not going to do any fancy stuff. I think we were planning to get some guests in to like play some horns and keys and backing vocals and stuff, and we just ran out of time. Just didn't do it. We just weren't organised enough. Yeah, rules are good. Yeah.
Well, do you want to play one of your songs for us, Cam?
I can play one. Yeah, I can do that. I had to decide which one to do. I couldn't figure it out very well.
All right, Cam, what are you going to play for us?
All right, I'm going to play a song called "It Didn't Come Calling." Do you need background, or just going to just do it?
You can do some background if you want.
This is from the 7 Days record. So this is written and recorded essentially in one night, and this was the last one I did. And I remember like at the end of the 7, the initial 7, and I was planning to do a pop song. I had some other chords, and I was going to do this, and then I came down here, and I just wasn't in the mood for a pop song. I was more in the mood for something a bit more somber. So I wrote this, which is, some people have said it's like the saddest song of mine that they've heard. But weirdly enough, I find it actually kind of uplifting. It's kind of like it's like the third in a trilogy of songs, which sounds very prog rock. It was an unintended trilogy. So I wrote this song years ago called Cul-de-sac, which is kind of about love and mortality and the mundanity of life in good and bad ways. And I think that's probably still the best song I've ever written. Like, I don't know, like it's sort of like it's a song where I can look at it and it's really like this can kind of like stand up with other songs. Like, and it's probably the only song, maybe one of the only songs I've ever written, maybe the only song I've written where I sort of feel that about. Maybe this one as well. So I wrote that, and then a little while later I wrote another song which had sort of similar chords. It's weird, they all have the same kind of chords, and it had a similar theme. That was a song called Runaway, and that was the one that was supposed to be on the unreleased record and that ended up being on 7 Days. And then I wrote this one, which again has similar kind of theme, and similar. They all just start. This one starts on A minor. The others are both they're A major, but like I don't know. There's a similar quality to them. Anyway, so this is my prog rock trilogy closer, and with all the fireworks and stuff. It's my slowcore sort of folk downer song. But it's not that much of a downer. It sounds like it, but I find it kind of uplifting. But I don't know if other people necessarily find that. Anyway, play the song. The end comes to me at night. I hope it comes without warning. I hope they find me lying in the morning light when I didn't come calling. I hope I don't spend too long on my own. If you move on before me, don't wanna find you lying in the morning light when you didn't come calling. wanna see the lines on your face as a result of those years. I wanna see you go gray and face the dawning day with the very same fears. I wanna feel that knot in my chest when you're driving in the rain. I wanna feel that hurt and make the whole world hurt when I go and cause you pain. I'll see you on the other side of the night. I hope the end comes to me at night. I hope it comes without warning. I hope they find me lying in the morning light when I didn't come calling. I hope I don't spend too long on my own. If you move on before me, don't wanna find you lying in the morning light when you didn't come calling. I see you on the other side of the night. See you on the other side of the night. See you on the other side of the night. See you on the other side of the night. See you on the other side of the night. See you on the other side of the night.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
If you want to hear more of Cam's St. Augustus solo stuff, it's all up on Bandcamp. The album that song was off was called 7 Days, and pretty much all of Cam's bands have their work up on Bandcamp. Two of his bands, Terra Pines and Tape Off, have just released new singles. They're out now. Go check them out. I've actually heard the entire new Tape Off album. I got a sneak peek at that last year. I'm very much looking forward to when it comes out. It is going to destroy some faces in all the right ways. Until next time, get in touch at gimmeempathypodcast@gmail.com. On Instagram, Gimme Empathy Podcast. Stay private. Keep it to yourself. Come on. No one wants to see that.